name is Suzanna, and I'm 45 years old, and I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I am shunned.
All right, Susanna. So, how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
Hmm, that's a pretty
Were
interesting
Were you
story.
born in?
No, definitely not born in. My great grandparents on my dad's side, they lost a son, and they were Catholic, and he was a bad alcoholic, and they were so afraid of hellfire that when the Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on their door, it was probably in the 30s. They were just so they just soaked the Jehovah's Witness doctrine up. They really liked the fact of the resurrection. They liked the fact that there wasn't a hellfire. And so those two great grandparents worked really hard to try to study with their kids and their grandkids and their great grandkids. And so some of their kids became Jehovah's Witnesses. And there was an aunt that I had, and I remember her studying the Great Teacher book. And she was a very nice aunt, so it always was a good memory. She had the little pink book, the Great Teacher book.
Mhm.
I think I was about 7 years old, and I just remember the pink book, the Great Teacher. I remember her studying. I remember having good memories, and all I remember is her telling me that I could pray, and that God would hear me as long as I said it in Jesus' name. So as a kid, and then my mom and dad got divorced, so I never really saw that aunt after that. But I would always pray, and I would be like, well, my Auntie Rosie said that as long as I say it in Jesus' name, God will hear me. So I kind of said my own prayers.
That's funny, the little things that stick with you. When you're a kid, you're just kind of given this rule that if you do it this way, then God's gonna listen, and so it sticks with you. Uh, that's kind of cute the way kids are about things like that at times.
Yeah. And it was a very, very rough childhood that I had. And so I prayed a lot to try to, get some type of comfort. I was so alone. And my mom, I know she did the best that she could, but she was in a very desperate situation trying to provide for us as a single parent, and my dad not giving her financial help. And she, I don't know if it's mental illness or she went through major depression, but it was just all about one, just trying to make a living to provide a roof over her head. And I know that was very difficult, and the stress she must have been under. But then it was ladies' night and the feelings bright. It was constant party, party. If she wasn't trying to work, that was like her vent to release, to party, party. So my brother and I were really, there to like fend for ourselves. There was many, many times that I remember she would be passed out, whether it was from partying or working. 5 o'clock would come around, we'd be hungry. 6 o'clock would come around, we'd be hungry. And then, as evening just came, we'd get hungry. So I would start, and I was like first grade, second grade. So I would cook for us, and oftentimes I would start fires. I'd burn a pot holder. I mean, I just had disasters in the kitchen. Everything would be burnt on the outside and raw on the inside. But I would figure something out. And then I remember she'd wake up like at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. Oh my God, I have kids. Are you guys hungry? And I'm like, well, I figured something out. So she was just a mess. And luckily we had my grandma, and she was very, very nice, but my grandma was like, I'll watch the kids if you're working, but I'm not going to watch the kids if you want to go partying. And that was kind of the approach my grandma took. And I was luckily to have her. I was blessed, and we had a very good extended Hispanic family, third generation. It was just a big tradition every year to make tamales for the holidays, and always had the holidays with my family, the extended family. And I remember just feeling really a very, very good feeling during the holidays. But other than that, at my mom's house, it was just chaos. At a very young age, I was, once again, I remember 6, 7 years old, just constantly telling me I was a little slut and a little whore, and I was going to amount to absolutely nothing.
Meanwhile, she was partying every night And I'm sure that partying, involved some of those activities.
Yeah.
But she was calling
She was
you,
the little slut and the whore. She was.
but calling you these names at 6, 7 years old, that's awful. And who was so when you were around your grandparents, they were witnesses, correct?
No.
Oh, they weren't witnesses. So I
No.
was wondering if there was
My
any.
great grandparents on my dad's side, but after my mom and dad got divorced, I never really saw them. I knew who
Okay,
they were, and I knew his family, but there were some his family that were Jehovah's Witnesses, the aunt that studied with me, but I never really saw them when my mom and dad got divorced. I just kind of knew who they were.
gotcha. So really, that aunt was the only real connection you had to the witnesses at first.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt you there. I was just trying to figure out who was the player there that involved the witnesses in your life. It's that early age.
Mm-hmm.
So your mom had taken to calling you names from a young age.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a pretty traumatic childhood. I remember I was babysitting a bunch of kids. Who puts a, first grader to go babysit a bunch of other little kids? And it
And
was
first graders,
cold.
like what, 5, 6?
I
Wow.
was just like, I was just thrown in there to like grow up and grow up quickly. And I remember it was winter, it was cold, it was snowing. And in my little mind, I thought, well, let's make a fireplace. So I got a shoebox, and I put paper in it. And then I said, well, let's start a fireplace to make us kids warm. So we're like standing around the shoebox, and then the shoebox started on fire and the rug started on fire. And us little kids actually had enough sense to like pour water on it and turn the fire out. But when my mom woke up, or when she got home, or who knows where she was, obviously you could smell the fire. And she beat the shit out of me, boy. I had a big black eye, and I was constantly a fire starter. I was so bad starting fires. And as an adult, I said, well, who leaves a first grader by themselves? You don't. And I looked at my nephew, who was first grader. I said, you wouldn't leave him by himself. You don't leave first graders by themselves. They're going to do stuff like that because they don't know.
Yeah, that's pretty neglectful.
Very neglectful. It was constantly neglectful. And so she had, people coming in and out of the house and partying, and she exposed my brother and I to a lot of bad things. And it was pretty chaos. It was chaos.
Wow. So you kind of then, I guess, got a view of life through that lens from an early age. That's kind of how you saw life.
Mm-hmm.
And usually I'm talking to people about how they saw life being one of Jehovah's Witnesses from a young age, but for you it was the opposite. You weren't a witness and were being exposed to a lot of pretty awful things,
Mm-hmm.
um, from a very early age, and then being forced to fend for yourself as a first grader. That is scary. And your brother, how much older was he?
He was 3 years younger.
3 years younger. Okay.
Yeah. And it was just
Wow.
constantly, he couldn't sleep. He was scared, and just coming to, I trying to take care of him as well and take care of myself. And it was chaos. I did have a cousin that I went to elementary school with that was a Jehovah's Witness, and I would notice him like during the holidays and stuff, that he wouldn't participate in the things that we did during the holidays. And I remember I felt like really sorry for him. But at the same time, I was kind of jealous of him because he had his mom and dad at home. And you never know what people's lives are really like, but it seemed like they loved him. And but that's a whole nother story down the road. But yeah, it was pretty chaos. I had a best friend that was 3 houses down from me, and she was 3 years older than me. And her name was Vanessa. We were just really close. And I would always, she'd always calm my mom down. And my mom was just chaos, angry, and no matter the littlest thing would set her off. And Vanessa would calm her down. So if I knew I was going to be in trouble, I'd go get Vanessa and hide behind her, like, please, Vanessa, please come and talk to my mom. And she was only 3 years older than me. She was a little girl herself. And years later, she ended up dying of an aneurysm. And when she died, I told my mom, I was like, what did Vanessa do to you? She would always calm you down, and you were a totally different person around her. And she's like, I don't know. She just made me laugh. She was so funny. I was a disaster. I was a mess. And I remember, my mom constantly just telling my extended family how I was going to amount to nothing. Everybody was, I was on the road to being a drug addict, living in the projects, having a bunch of kids, and amount to nothing. And I remember I told Vanessa, I was like, am I that bad? And she goes, oh no, girl. If I had a mom like yours, I'd be working that needle, working that needle. So she's like, you're not shooting up heroin, so you're doing pretty good. Okay, you smoke a little bit of pot now and then. She's like, you're doing good.
Right.
So
I mean, that's pretty observant coming from another kid, really, that you really were put in position to really get involved in some really bad things, some bad behaviors, some things that could have been even more destructive in your life, but you didn't.
no, yeah. Well, I was headed down the road to, that's kind of how I became a Jehovah's Witness. I ran away at 14, and most kids that come from a bad environment, they're searching for a sense of belonging. They're searching for family. They're searching for love. And I ran away, and I was with these gangbangers, and they were, at that time, crack cocaine was becoming big. And I remember they were big drug dealers. And I did do a little bit, and I'm just thankful and grateful. I wasn't a kid now with the meth and things that they have nowadays. But I always say I was going to either join the Los Carnales. I was very vulnerable to join a gang. But instead of joining the Los Carnales gang, I somehow managed to end up joining the Jehovah's Witness gang.
We didn't have we didn't have any gang signs or anything. It is interesting though, just as the parallels there. You didn't join a gang of sorts, but I mean you joined Jehovah's Witnesses, which have a lot of similarities
Totally.
in the way that they operate, as far as the way people deal with one another, and just the way you all have to think the same and go down the same path. There's someone you're following,
Very
and
difficult to leave.
very difficult to leave. Not very easy sometimes to join.
Yeah.
And in the end, instead of, I guess, us doing the fighting, we were waiting for Jehovah to come slaughter everyone, in the streets so that we could be happy.
Yeah.
A lot of similarities there.
Yeah, totally.
So how did that come about? How do you go from 14 on the streets? I mean, let's just say, for a 14-year-old on the streets, that alone is scary and
Very.
and can get you in some bad situations. How did you avoid those situations and then end up finding the witnesses?
I remember these guys that meet, because I was with a friend, and they were gonna do a drug run across state. I think it was Kansas or something, and they wanted us to go with them. And me and my friend were like, okay, but something in my gut, I just had this awful feeling, and I'm like, there's no way. There's no way. I told her, we cannot go with these guys across state. And I just knew at some deep level that it wasn't, not to run. And so I went to my grandma's house, and my mom had called the police, and they were looking for me. And I told the police, I said, take me to juvenile court or whatever, but don't send me back home to this lady. And I remember she saw us. The minute she saw me, she grabbed my neck and threw me up on the wall. My feet are like 6 inches above the ground. She's like, did you have fucking fun fucking around in the fucking streets? And she had my neck like that. And I was like, I'm not going with her. I'm not going back to her. I mean, I'll run away again, but I'll take me wherever you want to take me, but I'm not going back to her. And then my dad came, and he lived 2 hours away from where my mom lived. And he said, well, I'll take her. She could come and live with me. And I was like, okay. And my dad was like a Disneyland dad. He was really nice and fun. Whenever he did show up, it was always nice to be with him. but his wife was like, she was a Jehovah's Witness, not very, very active, but very possessive of my dad and just very, very jealous of me and anybody that my dad gave any attention to. So it was quite obvious she didn't want us around. I remember an aunt had told me that when we were kids, that she asked him, how are the kids doing? And she like rolled her eyes, and I'm like, yep, that's her. Kids know when they're not wanted.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You knew that with your mom too, on some level.
I definitely, at least my mom was super abusive, and
Yeah.
this lady was more of, you could just sense, you sensed it, but at least she wasn't abusive, and she did clean and she did cook. So I appreciated that. But I knew, it was kind of I knew she didn't want me there, but I was going to go anyway. I did like my dad. He was nice, but he was always that type of guy that he would say he was going to show up, and then sometimes he would, sometimes he wouldn't. If he would, it was nice, but sometimes he wouldn't. He was just a flaky person.
Yeah, it's a shame you've got your mother is incredibly abusive, and then your stepmom on the other side is controlling and sees you maybe more as an object
Yeah.
to control instead of a person. But then your dad actually can see you and such, but is, struggles to be there for you. So
Yeah.
you're kind of being failed by the adults in your life.
Totally failed. Totally. So I went to go live with him, and his whole deal is he told me I could go party with my friends on the weekends as long as I dedicated 1 hour a week to study with Jehovah's Witnesses. I was like, you're out of your flipping mind. And he wasn't a witness, and he went to the meetings every now and then, but I didn't have to go to meetings. All I had to do was just study with the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was like, he was so rebellious. He saw that he was a maintenance man at this apartment complex, and he saw this young sister. He's like, hey, you come here. And she's like, I thought I was going to get kicked out of the apartment complex. But he says, come over here. I want you to study the Bible with my daughter. So he thought, it was something good. It was going to be something good for me. And I really did not want to be there. And she knew it. I mean, I would purposely go get high right before the study just to kind of just be there.
And
And
how old were you when you were starting to study?
I was like 15, 14,
Okay,
15.
so still around that age.
Yeah.
Left. Okay.
Yeah, it was all around this time I ran away. So that was the whole thing, that I had to study. So he even made me sign a contract.
So it makes me think of like Scientology. I have to sign a physical contract. Yeah, so you were signing a contract so you can party all you want, but you got to study 1 hour a week with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Uh-huh.
And apparently a random Jehovah's Witness sister he pulled out of the apartment complex.
And she was really nice. She was like about 3 or 4 years older than me, so she was like a big sister. Really nice young girl. She got married young, went to Bethel, served in Walk Hill for many years. Now she's a special pioneer. She was a really nice lady. And I remember there was one day, I must have not have been high, I guess. And I was like, where do they get this Jehovah's name? Jehovah. And she showed me out of the King James Version. And I had a lot of respect for the King James Version because my great grandmother on my mom's side, Mama Maria, and my grandmother on my mom's side, they were very Catholic. And it's all about the King James and the rosary and the beads and the prayers. And so, in fact, my great grandmother, Mama Maria, she would say the rosary every night. When I spent the night, I would just listen to her, and it would like lull me to sleep. And she'd pray for all her kids, all her grandkids, all her great grandkids. And she'd go down the line. And then the minute she'd say my grandma's name, my mom's name, and our name, would be like, oh, now I can sleep. And then I would say, in my little prayer, I would say, dear God, I ditto whatever Mama Maria says. Amen. In Jesus' name, amen. So I have a lot of respect for the King James Version. So when I saw Jehovah's name out of that Bible, I was like, oh, I thought this veil just like unraveled my eyes. I'm like, oh my God, I thought like Jehovah was just calling me to him. And I just thought I had some type of awakening moment. And then ever since then I took my Bible studies really seriously. Like I would not get high before. I was like, I was fully she had my undivided attention, and I'd ask tons and tons of questions, and we'd study. And what I really liked is she would bring like encyclopedias over, and we would look up the holidays. And when I saw that the holidays, I didn't know the pagan backgrounds of the holidays. I was like, wow, wow. So I was just like soaking it up. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot. I mean, for a lot of people, seeing the name Jehovah in the Bible is kind of that hook that gets set, that gets them interested, because Jehovah's Witnesses found a thing that they could use. It's like, you think you know the Bible or whatever, but did you know that God has a name,
Name.
and his name is Jehovah, and you can find it in this scripture in your own Bible? And then suddenly you are now distrustful of everything you've been taught, and starting to look at them as like, well, maybe these people know something. So
Yeah.
it's a really great selling point for Jehovah's Witnesses to use that. It really does interest a lot of people, and kind of hooks them in. It certainly got your attention, didn't
Yeah,
it?
definitely got my attention. And I really, to tell you the truth, I really was hook, line, and sinker with the paradise, because we don't know what heaven is like. We know what the earth is like. We know what, it is to be with family and good food and a paradise, and not be in a nice park with animals. We know what that's like. So that just really resonated with me. I'm like, wow, to be able to live on a paradise here on earth and have resurrected loved ones, Mama Maria and Grandma Laulia Sais, and just like I was like, wow, I was very fascinated, and that was very appealing to me.
Yeah, that I always say, I think Jehovah's Witnesses have the best sales pitch on the planet. You never have to die. In other religions, you have to die to go to heaven. You never have to die. You get to live on earth, which, like you said, we don't know what heaven's like. Earth, we know what that's like, and we know how to enjoy it, and we would like to enjoy it better. And then having a resurrection of those to the earth, of the people that we know and we've missed. Um, that's a heck of a sales pitch there,
It
that
really
you
is.
get to have everything you already have, but so much better. And you don't have to die or anything. You just have to do whatever they say.
Yeah.
You have to die to your former self, as they sometimes would say, and put on that new personality as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But it's a great sales pitch. It's something people can identify with, and I'm honestly a little surprised at times that more people don't fall for it, because it's appealing.
It was very appealing to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So where did you take it as you were studying?
So I just studied. I just lived with my dad for about a year, and then my mom took my dad to court and made me go back to live with him, and I was angry. And there was a Jehovah's Witness. She was more like a grandmother's type age, not as old. And she always worked in the neighborhood. I always remember her dropping off magazines and stuff. And my mom told her that while I was going to be coming back to live with her, and that I can, you know, resume my Bible studies with her. And oh man, I wanted to run away again so bad. I did not want to go back to live with her. And I went, and her house was a disaster. A disaster. Like, she purposely had it a disaster because she knew I was going to come. She's like, "Yeah, this is why I wanted you to come back, so you could clean up this mess." And
How loving. She
oh,
fought for you, fought to get you back so she could what, punish you?
mhm, yeah.
Wow.
And I just humbled myself because I was studying with Jehovah's Witnesses, and I would just talk about long suffering. I remember they used to use that word all the time, long suffering. I was long suffering. And the Jehovah's Witness lady that was studying with me there, and she was a very nice lady too. She was like, "Don't worry, you'll be, you're already 15 years old. A couple more years, you'll be out of the house, and you can go do whatever, live wherever unfortunately we can't pick our parents, but it'll just be a short period of time, and it'll be over soon enough." And it was only because I was studying with the Jehovah's Witnesses, and because of what she was telling me, like, I sucked it up and just stayed there with my mom and just made the best of it as much as I could.
Yeah, that's really tough. See that contrast though. So you've got this lady that you're studying with, and well, first of all, can we all agree that long suffering is just a horrible, horrible term that sets people up for a life of dealing with, a lot of times, dealing with other people's stuff, and not really, like, we weren't allowed to explore who we were and what we wanted. We were to long suffer through whatever we were told to do or what other people wanted. Um, but you've got your study conductor, who's this sweet lady, and then your mom, who is treating you so poorly. So it's easy to see which is going to be more attractive to you at the time.
Totally. And I look back now, what else was I going to do? Run away again, go hang out with the drug dealer gangbangers? And then what would have become of my life? So it was probably the best decision at the time. The Jehovah's Witnesses really did save my life. I mean, and I'm thankful and grateful because I cleaned up my lifestyle, no drugs, no this and that. And it helped me to read, that studying and reading out loud really was very helpful. And they taught me sales, and that's what I do for a living. I'm a very successful sales lady and sales exec, and it's all because of Jehovah's Witnesses. It's always, they teach you sales, 101 sales. Their meetings are nothing but sales meetings. Their conventions are sales conventions.
I love that you said that. I mean, the what was it, the school and service meeting? It's nothing but how to sell. It's how to manipulate people, how to talk to people, how to get them on your side at times. I mean, now sales doesn't have to be manipulative. It's just sharing enthusiasm for something. But we were specifically taught how to hook people in with certain things, and or how to try to anyway, in certain ways with the things that we were enthused about, and sometimes. Uh, Sometimes I think that you brought up something that might make some people uncomfortable, but is a good point, and that is that sometimes finding Jehovah's Witnesses can be better than what, joining a gang and going down the drug dealing, gang banging path. There are, but of course, it didn't have to be Jehovah's Witnesses. It could have been a lot of different things that could have gotten you out of that path. You just needed anyone to come along outside, and it just happened to be them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was it that you ended up, what was your path then to, I mean, were you in a hurry to get baptized and to take a stand for it, or what was
No,
the
it was
path?
difficult because I mean, it was very difficult for me to give up my friends, Vanessa and all my other friends and my whole lifestyle. But there was a Kingdom Hall right up the street from my mom's house. So here I am, 15 years old, walking, getting dressed up like a Jehovah's Witness and walking to the Kingdom Hall all by myself. My mom, my brother never stepped foot in a Kingdom Hall. They don't know nothing. And all the Jehovah's Witness parents are like, "Oh wow, look at this teenage kid! Oh, this is so wonderful to see her here. Why can't we get our kids to be this zealous?" Oh, and they would love, and then they just love bomb you anyway. So all these parents were just love bombing me to death, and I'm sure they meant well and they were sincere, and a lot of them are very good people.
Yeah, they
But
were just excited to see you,
yeah,
and thought it was they're told that to see someone like a 15-year-old making the truth their own and coming on their own to the Kingdom Hall. Yeah, of course they're going to be excited for that. That just, it also validates what they're doing. It's like, well, look, somebody else wants to be one of us too, so it makes them feel good.
yeah. Yeah, so it took me a long time well, maybe not that long, but a good couple years of studying, just because it was just always a hard lifestyle. I mean, to completely give up everything 100%, holy crap, it's pretty difficult. So my heart was, I really wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness though. I was really wanted to be there. And, but it just took me a long time to clean up my lifestyle and give up all the stuff that they want you to give up, the holidays, the friends, and they really do a good job as isolating their members.
Oh yeah. The you having to give up Vanessa or other such friends, that's going to be isolating. And then leaving the holidays behind is probably going to isolate you from family,
Yeah.
which is really tough. And so I guess it was a slow process for
Very
you.
slow. It was a very slow process. Yeah. But I would go to the Kingdom Hall. I'd be very zealous and very happy and walk to the Kingdom Hall all by myself, or the lady that was studying with me would come and pick me up. And um, yeah.
So how did you progress from there? So you're
Well, then
15,
my
you're going.
mom moved to Denver, which was like 2 hours away from the small town that we lived in. And then my study conductor is like, okay, this is your opportunity. You're going to move in a whole new town. So now you can get away from all your friends and everything here in Pueblo, and you can start fresh and just have nothing but Jehovah's Witness friends. And that's what I did. So I was like 16, 17. And I studied with this other lady. By then we were studying the United in Worship book together. I'd already gone through the Live Forever book. And this lady was like my mom's age, and she was just this beautiful, spunky lady, and just kind and loving, and just that motherly, nice, you just felt so good with her. She was just a beautiful, beautiful lady. So I felt like I had that mom. I had a lot of the spiritual moms, but she was like the main spiritual mom. She just took me under her wing, and boy, I loved her. And plus it was just good timing. So I didn't make any worldly friends, so-called worldly friends. And I just made just Jehovah's Witness friends, and became very, very, very zealous. And then started going door to door. When I say that they teach you sales, it's sales 101. All you got to do is knock on the doors, make the calls, make the calls, make the calls, and then keep a CRM system. They have their own CRM system, from their, whether it's just a book or whatever, you keep notes of who you talk to, and you make sure you follow up, follow up, follow up, and just keep good notes, and keep following up. That's basically 101's sales. And I was zealous too, so I was so excited. And then when I became the unbaptized publisher, I was super excited to go preach to others and go door to door.
And because CRM, for those who don't know, is in that customer relationship management
Uh-huh.
software. Yeah, that was what we did, right? With the return visits and keeping accurate notes on everybody that we would visit, and getting to know them as individuals and their family.
What was their dog's name?
Yeah,
Did they have kids? Did they have toys around their house?
yeah, yeah. All the things that would tip you off to things that could be pain points at times that you could talk to the customer about.
Or just relate to them when you call them again. How is your son Jacob? Da, 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 da. Just have conversation.
It's relationship building.
Yeah.
And we were taught how to do that.
Yeah, and that's not bad.
No, absolutely not. No, it's good to have relationships with people, especially when you genuinely care. Which,
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, when we did go out knocking on people's doors, we did
You
truly
did care, of course. We were so genuine, of course.
Yeah, that's what makes it hurt later when we realize sometimes the totality of what we were involved in, because we did care, and then we learn later that maybe it wasn't quite what we thought. So for you, you're getting into this more and starting to get active, right?
Very active. I was
Yeah.
like gung ho, zealous, going to go, not making any friends at school. And if any of the people wanted to try to make friends with me, I was gonna preach to them. Everybody's like, oh God.
Yeah, how'd that go over?
I was just clueless because I was just so happy. My brother, who really likes his back scratched, he would con me and say, if you scratch my back, I'll let you talk about the Bible.
He was smart. And so I'm guessing that worked as well.
Yeah, then I was able to count my time, and he would ask questions and he'd pretend like he's interested. I'm like, is he really interested, or is he just wanting to get me to scratch his back longer?
Yep, I think we know. So how did it go? Did you enjoy the preaching work? Did you
I
enjoy?
did. I really loved the preaching work. I hear so many people in their interviews how they hated it, and I didn't. I loved it. I loved being with the friends. I loved whenever you would get somebody and talk at the door, you know, everything about it. I loved. The only thing I didn't love, as I'm not a morning person, and I hated getting up early. It was like, oh, I dragged myself. But once I got there, then I was happy.
Yeah, and
And I always felt like it set the day to make the rest of the day better for me.
yeah, and so would you say, are you kind of extroverted?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it plays into, sometimes it plays into our personalities or whatever the case may be, though it
Yeah.
still doesn't make you a morning person necessarily.
No.
And so yes, for some people, and I think that's again a good point, that for a lot of people they hated it, but that doesn't mean that was everybody's experience, and you
Right.
did truly enjoy it. You
I
enjoyed
did. I
probably the
really
people
felt like I
you.
was doing the right thing. I was saving
Yeah,
lives and saving my own life at the same
yeah.
time.
Yeah, and getting to hang out with people, I'm sure, was good for you too at that
Yeah.
time, being in a new place, making new friends, and other associates through the preaching work. I'm sure that was, it felt good for you to feel like you belonged.
It really felt good that I felt like I belonged. And there was in my congregation at that time, there was a lot of kids, teenagers around my age. And we just did so much stuff. We went skating and just just have fun stuff, and we would laugh and have so much fun. And I used to think, wow, this is some clean, wholesome fun, and we're actually having a good time and nobody's hungover the next day. This is pretty good.
Now, I've got a question. I know that your mom seemed to be supportive and that she was helping set you up with these sisters to talk to you at times. But do you know, how did your mom feel, or how did it affect your relationship after you all had moved? Suddenly you're spending more and more time with the congregation. Was that a problem, or did she like that, or
She was
was she
so
just,
not in the picture anyway. I think she probably did because I wasn't running away. I wasn't doing drugs. She didn't have to worry about. She didn't have to worry about me. Um, so in a sense, I think she was kind of happy. I mean, she would have guys. I remember she'd have guys coming in and out of the house still, and I'm thinking, God, I'm the freaking adult, and she's like the teenager. I'm like, why are you bringing this guy in the house? And sure enough, he wants to, smoke dope with my brother and I. He wants to go get us high, and I was just like, you got to be kidding me, you know you're going to bring these kind of people into our life. And she's like, well, I'm still young and blah blah blah. And I'm like, but your decisions are affecting our lives. You're bringing these people in. It's not good.
Mhm. um well, so then she was probably, it sounds like she was either supportive or just resigned, just didn't really care that you were doing it, like it was fine.
No, yeah, I don't think she really cared. I mean, I was not. I mean, I was like so gung ho Jehovah's Witness. There was no way I was going to be doing any drugs with anybody, and more or less a guy that she brought home. I was like I was trying to scold her, lecture her. I think she didn't like that. You get real preachy too. You get when you become a Jehovah's Witness, you da, 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 and you need to doing this and that, and she probably didn't appreciate that. I'm sure. She would say things to me like, "Don't scare your brother," because the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's all scare and doom and gloom and Armageddon and stuff like that. She didn't want me scaring other kids and telling them about Armageddon and things like that. Like, don't scare them.
Hmm. Interesting that even she realized, again, it's the fear a lot of times that is motivating you in different ways as a witness, to
Yeah.
you are kind of trying to scare other people. You're trying to scare them straight, you think.
Yeah.
But yeah, fear is a big tool that is used in that toolkit.
And she saw it. I mean, she has a lot of faults, but she saw that. I wish I would have saw it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're so zealous and everything. Where does that lead? Does that lead to your eventual baptism?
Yeah, definitely. Became baptized, went to the Spanish congregation trying to serve where the need was great. And um, it was just always difficult for me because I wanted to have fun. I like salsa dancing and going and doing things, and I like guys and boys, and you're just so limited of the guys in the organization, and they're so, I don't know, boring. And there was this guy that I did date, very, very nice guy. And his goal was so Bethel. I mean, he was like so Bethel, 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 Bethel. And I knew I don't like that kind of structure. I don't like that kind of structure. I knew at a very young age, like Bethel is definitely not for me. And I'd be doing him a disservice if I would, say that I was going to, as well. So yeah, so then, it was hard because I wanted to go have fun. I was still torn to go kind of be a young teenager still and go find some fun. But at the same time, I was like, oh God, Armageddon's going to come and I got to get back on the straight and narrow. And
So how
so
old were you when you got baptized and made it official and locked it in?
17.
17.
Yeah.
Um, that's an interesting age because 18, a lot of people are graduating high school or going out and doing other things. So just getting locked in at that age is an interesting age to get baptized at.
Hmm.
Right before you maybe have a little more freedom and,
Hmm.
and can make some of your own decisions. But I appreciate the contrast of you've got this witness life that has kind of saved you in some ways
Yeah.
from things that you could have gone some paths you could have gone down, but it's also keeping you from doing some things that you just enjoyed or were interested in, whether it's dating or dancing or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that war play out?
Oh, it was a freaking war. It was constant war for years, in and out and in and out. I couldn't be in, I couldn't be in it, but I'd leave and then I would feel guilty. So I was going to go serve where the need was great to Ecuador. And the sisters that I was going to go with ended up bailing out on me last minute. So I'm like, well, I'm still going to go by myself. Well, the minute I got there, I knew at a very deep level I did not want to be a Jehovah's Witness, because there was this Jehovah's Witness lady and she was trying to get me to go on this 6-hour bus ride to go to some convention or something. But yet the whole town was getting ready for this dance party on the street. And they're going to have live music and dancing. And oh, I wanted to go to that so bad. And I was like torn. And she was like trying to get me to go with her. And I was like, oh, I need to go with her, but I don't want to go. I want to go to this dance. And yeah, I knew at a very deep level I didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness. So I ended up ditching her and I went to the dance and I had fun. I was like the superstar there. I was like Norteamericana, la Suzanna, la Norteamericana. And I had guys lined up to dance with me all night long, all ages, from 7 years old to 90 years old. I mean, they were all ages. And then they would dance with me and then they go stand back in line. And at first I was like so happy. I was so happy. And then hours and hours, I'm like, I can't dance anymore. I can't dance anymore. You guys are getting rest in the line. I don't get any rest. I, I danced my tushy off, boy. I had a blast and I don't regret it one bit.
Wait a minute now. You mean that was more fun than a 6-hour bus ride for what, a 3-day convention
Tension.
in
Oh,
Ecuador? That's
yeah.
that's a really good story. I love the contrast there. You knew where you wanted to be ultimately, and it was dancing and having fun and enjoying life and not living. It's almost like they kind of saved you from certain things, but then real quickly you realize that it's not, these aren't really my people through and through.
Yeah.
It's not what I want to be doing with my life.
But I would always feel guilty. I was constantly, because to me, Armageddon was so real and everything was so real that it was going to happen any minute now. And because I decided to be at this dance, I'm going to be destroyed at Armageddon.
Yeah, which again just shows the fear that is the motivation. It's not, I just love Jehovah so much. You know, he's done so much for me and life is so good. And I just really owe this debt of gratitude to him. It's, I don't want God to murder me. And so I'm going to try my best to do what it is that he says I should do. Uh,
Yeah.
unless a
You
dance
know
partner
that
comes with.
scripture that they used to always say that it would be better for a person had they've never known the truth.
Yep.
And I would be, I'd like, God, I wish I didn't know. I wish I didn't know this truth. I wish I didn't know it. I don't want to know it because I don't want to feel guilty.
Hmm.
It was just a disaster. And so, and I would like, okay, I'm not going to read any literature. I'm not going to go to any of the key meetings because I'm going to just deaden my conscience. And I'm just going to, I just want to not know any of this stuff anymore. Yeah.
I mean, what a pressure that really puts on you. It's tough, and you're not. A lot of us have felt that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So, then, I think I was by this time I was in my early 20s, and boy, I was having some fun, tequila drinking, salsa dancing, mini skirts, and everything.
So what did you? I mean, so you're having this fun. Uh, I mean, are you just living this life where you're, living the the double life, which in this case is actually maybe your JW life because you've got this other life over here that's really you. It's reflective of you. Um, were you really struggling, staying between those two
No, I
worlds?
never could do that. I never could do the double life thing. I would be too much for me. So whenever I was out, and I would go have fun. And I wouldn't go to the Kingdom Hall. I wouldn't read any magazines or anything like that. But then it was like just tug of war, like my mind. I wanted to go back, but then I couldn't stay. I couldn't stay in because I want to go party. Then the minute if I go party, then I would not go to the Kingdom Hall. So I couldn't do. I really had a struggle of doing both. I was either going to do one or the other.
Okay, so then for you, it was just a tug of war of, okay, this week or for this period of time, I'm over here dancing in mini skirts and having fun. And then, okay, now my conscience is bothering me, or I
Then you
feel like
get
I got
back
to get
to
back to it. So then
yes,
you go back to it.
yes.
Constant in and
Look, constant in and out. And then like for family members, non-Jehovah's Witness family members, they looked at me like, you're so wishy-washy. You're in, you're out, you're in, you're out. I was like, they don't know the type of tug of war that I was having, with the mind control. I didn't even know I was under mind control at the time, but it was constant battle. And then I remember one time, okay, I'm going to do good. I'm going to do good. I'm going to get back. I'm going to get back to the Kingdom Hall. And then so sure enough, the brothers want to have the talk with you.
out.
And it was about 21 maybe. And so they come to have the talk with me. And yeah, I was like, yeah, I've committed fornication. And they wanted to know so many details. How often did I orgasm? What kind of panties did I wear? Where was it at? And where did it happen? And how many times? And I was like caught off guard. I was like, why, what? And I was going to the Spanish congregation at the time. So I kept on thinking, well, maybe I just misunderstood because my Spanish isn't 100%. I mean, I'm sure I misunderstood. And I would like try re-ask him the question again. And I was like, oh my God, they're serious. This is like really personal, very evasive questions. Very, very uncomfortable. It's another form of abuse. And the fact that you feel like you have to be obedient to these elders and tell them the truth. I'm like, well, I don't wear any panties, brothers. I bet they were like, whoa.
It is abuse, absolutely. And it's something that you can't see coming. You don't know when you enter that meeting that it's going to be anything like that, whether you're a brother or a sister, and they're going to ask you ridiculous questions that are completely boundary crossing.
Yes.
And because you don't see it and you're caught off guard, and because you're taught to trust them implicitly, you're going to usually end up answering those questions.
Yeah. So yeah, that was my first disfellowshipping, and I was devastated. And I was told, Jehovah was not going to hear my prayers anymore. So I stopped praying because I thought he wasn't going to hear my prayers anymore. I mean, here as a kid, my aunt told me as long as I said in Jesus' name, he'll always listen to my prayers. And now this body of elders are telling me that God's not going to hear my prayers anymore unless I get reinstated.
Doesn't that really show, the position that Jehovah's Witnesses put themselves in? They talk about how Jesus isn't really the mediator for the average Jehovah's Witness. It's only for the 144,000 or the anointed. But they actually are the mediator. Like, Jehovah's Witnesses are the in-between between you and God. And they take that position. They don't tell you they're doing it, but that's really what they're doing, because they're saying, you left us, so God won't listen to you anymore.
And I believed him.
Well, of
How
course
awful
you
is
did.
that? I sat there and believed him, so I didn't pray.
Sure, of course. And isn't it, but it just shows what a disgusting position they've put themselves in, that, and although I'm not a believer in any sense, it's still, I mean, I understand it. And if you think that you're praying to Jehovah through Jesus, but yet Jehovah's Witnesses can block that prayer, like, who's more important here, Jehovah, Jesus, or Jehovah's Witnesses? Which just kind of shows the position they're really putting themselves in with their members. They're God. Jehovah's Witnesses are the God.
Totally.
That's who you're going through for everything, and it really puts you in a bad position.
Oh, yeah, you see it now, but at the time you didn't. And my brother, who's just a disaster, he's not functioning. He's a very bad alcoholic. He can't hold down a job. It's just very, very sad, because we both had a lot of hurt, and he's dealt with it in his own way, and I've dealt with it in my way. Don't mean that it was healthy, but he's really not functional. But he was like, and he was serious. He's like, how do you get kicked out of church?
Here he
is. He's such a mess, but he says the simplest thing that makes so much freaking sense. How do you get kicked out of church? I don't understand, sister. Tell me.
Says it all, doesn't it? How do you get kicked out of church? It's pretty messed up.
Yeah. I'm like, I was really bad.
But remember, you're not really kicked out. You can still come back. According to, so how did you react to all this? Did you feel so bad and so shamed that you came right back immediately and were at all the meetings, or did you kind of go off and live that other life that you had?
I did go off and live the other life, but I was devastated. I was so broken and so hurt and so sad. I was a kid in a traumatic situation. I just got another form of spiritual abuse thrown at me, and I was just broken. And I didn't have the proper tools that I needed to work through things. And so what people end up making are bad decisions. And that's what I did. I made some really bad decisions. And I would go partying and get all drunk and then cry, all drunk. Oh, I got to get back to the kingdom. Oh, I got to get back. I got to get back. And there was this guy that I met. He was like this steady Eddie type guy. He was a very stable guy, good worker, a good provider. And he used to study with Jehovah's Witnesses. And so I was like, well, I know if I get with him, he wouldn't stop me from Jehovah's Witnesses. And I didn't love him. I really wasn't in love with him. And he really manipulated me. He knew my weaknesses, my vulnerabilities as well. And he would tell me things like, nobody's going to love you like I do. And nobody loves you type of stuff. And, you're going to have a secure place here with me. Come with me. And he really just made me feel like I didn't deserve any better, that I had to just settle for him. And that was going to be the easiest route for me. And I was going to make it easier for me to get back to the Kingdom Hall.
But really, isn't that the same thing that Jehovah's Witnesses are telling you? If you leave Jehovah's organization, you'll never be loved by God again. You can only have the love of God if you're here in the organization, and you won't have any, your life will be valueless if you leave.
God, it's
And
the patterns that people live. They say, people that have abusive relationships constantly are in such, they get into the same abusive relationships.
Mhm.
Here I was, a kid, unloved, not wanted, go into this religion that thinking, oh, it's so, you're loving and this and that and all pretty on the outside. And once you get in, it's just another abusive, you're not good enough, you're not good enough, you're unloved. And if you leave us, you're not gonna, da 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 da, you're gonna die at Armageddon, and you're gonna be returned back to dog back to its vomit. And then I get into this marriage with this guy that's telling me the exact same thing. I'm like, I'm not lovable. Any which way I look at it, at a very deep level, because I've done a lot of work on myself, I feel I'm unlovable.
Mhm. And those roles often start at young ages. We are given certain roles, or we adopt certain roles in our families where we feel unloved, or whatever the case may be. And then, like you said, that's the pattern that we tend to repeat. We
Mhm.
show up and play that role, or people find us. Like you said, he's kind of, it sounds like he was seizing on an opportunity there.
Yeah, he really
He saw
was.
an opportunity to set up a certain thing that felt probably at home to him because of roles that he played out from his childhood, and we all just end up playing these roles out like roles in an awful play.
Yeah.
And uh, obviously those roles can be interrupted and stopped eventually, but it's something that does require effort to get healthy,
Yeah.
which like you said, you've put in the effort.
Yeah. Yeah, and a lot of family members told me not to marry him. They're like, "Oh, don't, whatever you do, it's no." And it's like, nobody can tell you anything. It's hard. People on the outside can see things, but you got to, figure things out yourself. It's very, very difficult. But, and then after that whole disaster marriage, I told you so. I told you so. I shouldn't have married him, blah, blah, blah. But I did marry him, and I was able to get back reinstated again to the Jehovah's Witnesses. And he had two kids, and I was a stepmom, and they were really nice kids. And I actually feel kind of bad because I really forced them to go to the Kingdom Hall. And I know they just really wanted to just please. They were just pleasers, and I, you know, who knows how much indoctrination they came to all the meetings though with me. They definitely were there for me. And to me, it kind of felt good because, even though I was disfellowshipped, I couldn't talk to nobody, but at least I had the kids, you know, with me. And sometimes he would come with me to Kingdom Hall too. And he would always say, I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you can go to the Kingdom Hall and not talk to anybody and just be ignored and then leave right away. Like to him, it was like very uncomfortable for him. And I was like, well, that's just the way it is. And if you love Jehovah and you love the truth, you'll just suck it up and do what you got to do.
So interesting that he, a person who's setting up that pattern, can see at the same time that this is messed up. um did you, when you were disfellowship, did you find that were the elders there for you? Were they reaching out to you, trying to help you, as a lost sheep? Were they saying, hey, I see your effort and I see you're coming back, so let's sit down and talk about this and see if we can help you along the way? Or were you just kind of on your own? You show up when you show up, you're disfellowshipped, they shun you too.
Well, I was moved, and then when I got married to him, it was in a different environment, and it was a different congregation. I remember they came to the door, and I said, they were working in the neighborhood at that congregation at that time, and I said, "Oh, I'm just fellowship, but I really would like to come back." And then his wife turned around and walked down the street, and the elder stayed there and then talked to me and gave me the information of when the meetings were and what I needed to do. And but that's about it.
But like, so no one was following up with you. How did you end up getting, or did you get reinstated?
Yeah. Yeah. So then I went to that elder, I went back to the meetings, and then told me that whenever I was ready I needed to I was probably disfellowship for maybe 3-4 years or something. And then I came back and he told me that I needed to write a letter. and that he needed to get in touch with the elders, the congregation where I was. It was a Spanish congregation. And that was just a total disaster. I mean, we couldn't get a hold of them and this and that. I just felt like it was just a test, like just to test me out to see how much I really wanted to get back, how
Yeah.
persistent I was going to be, how persistent.
Yeah. How bad do you want it? Again, I find it interesting that the elders don't come after you to help you. They don't care about people as people. Typically, this is about procedure, and so now you need to write a letter, but they have to get in contact with your former elders. And then, like you said, nothing ever goes right. They usually don't accept your first letter where you want to come back. They give you a hard time, and they want to see how bad you want it.
Uh-huh.
So you wanted it bad enough, and you did eventually succeed in getting reinstated
Yeah,
then.
got reinstated.
What was that like? What is it like sitting there in a Kingdom Hall? I guess do you know that they're going to announce you that night? You know that, right?
When they're going to announce you being reinstated?
Yeah.
Yeah, they tell you they're going to announce you.
How does it feel sitting there knowing they're going to announce that, and then the reaction of people? Does it feel good, or is it overwhelming, or like
I
what is that?
I thought it felt good. It did. I guess it was overwhelming because everybody comes up and hugs you and welcomes you back. And
Yeah, I was just wondering what are the emotions that a person goes through in that moment. I've never gone back. Mine was a one-way trip.
yeah, good for you. I wish I wish I would have never went back. But it's what was I gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say.
Oh, that's okay. I was just asking what it was like going back, how it felt. Um, uh, what about so you're reinstated then? Um, do you just feel like one of them again instantly, or
Oh, kinda, yeah. And of course, they assign you somebody to study with again. I was constantly getting assigned people to study with me. I just really needed support. I just needed somebody to care about me, like adult support, like a motherly figure. I was just so drawn to these motherly figures. And the minute they would stop studying with me, they were definitely nice and still friendly and stuff like that. But I think the Jehovah's Witnesses are so, because they're time sensitive of having to clock in and clock out, and they can only get hours for certain periods of people. They work so hard to try to bring people in, but they don't work very hard to keep people. Because if they were able to spend their hours with weak ones, inactive ones, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see, but I just felt like the minute you get baptized or the minute you're done with your studies, and it's kind of like, okay, you're off on your own.
yeah, and then they're off to maybe study with
The
somebody
next
else or
person,
whatever,
so that
but
way they can
they're
make their
done with you.
time for their pioneer hours or,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, you mentioned a good point. It's retention. They have terrible retention.
terrible
Uh,
retention.
they're out there spending all these hours in fruitless efforts trying to get people in, while at the same time, the people who come in, sometimes just because of familial relationships or whatever the case may be, come in, they let them walk right out the back door and
Yeah,
don't bat an eye and move
yeah,
on. And they're just forward focused on getting new people in, and whatever happens in the background, they just let it go.
yeah.
Uh, it's a really interesting machine that we were all a part of.
A hamster will.
Yep, get going nowhere, expending a lot of effort. So okay, so you get reinstated, and now life's great, right?
Definitely not, man. I realized I was like, I do not need to be married to this guy, you know. I really, and I felt guilty because I felt like I was spiritually responsible for his kids. Like, and the elders told me that. They knew we were struggling. And they said, if you leave, you're going to be blood guilty for these kids because they're doing so well with, going to the meetings and everything because of you. And the minute you leave, they're not going to go to the meetings. and it's going to be your fault. And so I just had a huge amount of pressure, like feeling blood guilty for them.
Wow, just think about how abusive that is. That's almost, sometimes people will say, people will get in relationships with some hurting people, who have bad coping mechanisms, and they'll say things like, if you leave me, I'll kill myself.
Yeah.
And one of the worst, that's one of the most manipulative, awful things you can do to another person, is to make another person feel literally responsible for your life. And it's a way of keeping people held in a pattern that's really unhealthy. It's very abusive to do that to another person. And that's basically what they're doing with the whole blood guilt thing, is saying you're responsible. Basically, these kids are going to die, and it's because of you.
Yeah.
You are responsible for their life. And that's not a fair position to put another human being in.
And it really had a toll on me for many, many years, just constantly feeling guilty for them.
Yeah, it's shame that keeps you stuck.
Yeah.
Makes you feel like a bad person. When in reality, they're the ones doing something that's unhealthy in the first place, by putting you in that position. So what did you end up doing with the relationship?
I ended up finally divorcing him and leaving him. And then I just became inactive. I just felt like, well, I'm too guilty to go to the Kingdom Hall. Plus, I wanted to go have some fun too. I wanted to go back salsa dancing.
All goes back to dancing, doesn't it? There's a
Definitely.
party somewhere, and Suzanna has to dance. That's awesome. So you just became inactive and went on your way, or did anything happen after that?
So yeah, so I ended up getting divorced, and I ended up having a really fun life, going salsa dancing, and trying to make a living, and in sales, business to business sales, and was just trying to just live my life and trying to not let the guilt overwhelm me. And there was the old Jehovah's Witness mom, which she lived somewhat in the neighborhood still, so she would still pop in from time to time, leave me magazines, invite me to assemblies, invite me to memorials. And it went on for about 12 years. Like, once you stop going to try to get back into the routine, but I was a pony, and physically out, mentally in. And that is an awful place to be. Awful place, because I can't really enjoy where I'm at because I'm so mentally, I got to get back, I got to get back, and Armageddon's going to come. And just an awful situation to be in.
Did you feel a lot of shame?
A lot of shame. And
So it's
guilt.
like you can go live your life, the life you want to live, but you just feel bad for it in the background.
Yeah,
And
you
like,
can't really live the life. You
yeah,
can't really live your life because you're just constantly feeling guilt.
gotcha. So you can't even fully experience what you're trying to. Makes sense.
No.
That's awful. That is awful. You're in limbo, caught between two worlds. Can't be yourself in either of them.
No. Yeah.
So what happened as she continued to encourage you or whatever? Did that?
Oh yeah, it was just constant guilt. I'd be like, oh God, here she comes again. She leaves me a note, and like, yeah, I know, I got to get back. I got to get back. Just life is just busy with everything, I was just like, God, I don't know how I did it with all those nights, because obviously they had three times a week and then service. I mean, you're to try to make ends meet and be able to have that type of schedule. It was just ridiculous. So I wouldn't go back. And I remember then she finally came and told me that they'd now cut out the book study meeting, and so now that's only 2 meetings a week. And so I was like, well, that's making it more doable. And I started to have I always had back problems. I was born with the genetic back condition, and it just started to get worse. So the dancing, that was, I couldn't dance anymore. I was in so much pain. I mean, I was chronic pain, and I ended up having back surgery. I had back fusion, and then a few years later I had a hip surgery, and it was just, I was in so much pain. I mean, I could barely just just work, and then on the weekends, just barely go to the grocery store, and that was it. I really wasn't living life. And then she would, catch me at home on the weekends, and I'd be like, yeah, I gotta go. But I just sitting for long periods of just sitting, not even a long period of time, just for an hour would just kill me. And I'm like, oh, the thought of having to go sit at Kingdom Hall just would like create anxiety in my body to have to go there. But mentally, I wanted to go. It's just physically, I just couldn't go. And I was with a gentleman for several years. He was more of a mentor type person in my life. He was he's a coach. He was a basketball coach. So he was a good coach. He saw something in me and really helped me a lot as far as life and business, and really, really good person. He was my best friend. He was everything. And they told me that, if I wanted to go back to the Kingdom Hall, that I was going to have to sever that relationship. And that was really, really hard. But I, I wanted it. So I thought I wanted it so bad. I thought I wanted to go back to the truth so bad that I was willing to do anything, and anything hard is worth, doing.
Hmm. So you ended up severing that relationship to go back to
Yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses?
Yeah, I did. And that was a really important relationship. And he was really good to me. Um, so yeah, I had my back surgeries, and I was in a lot of pain. So no more salsa dancing for me. And um, so I thought it was just time. Plus, it was just really weird. Like everywhere I went, I would run into a Jehovah's Witness. I'd be at the doctor's office, and the lady was a Jehovah's Witness, or I'd be somewhere else and some Jehovah's Witness. I'm like, oh my God, Jehovah's trying to tell me something. All these Jehovah's Witnesses are just showing up. And I just thought it was a sign, like for him to try to get me back.
No, it's was it cognitive bias? When it's like you buy a red Honda Accord and suddenly you see all the red Honda Accords. There aren't suddenly more red Honda Accords. You're just noticing
You're
them
just
because it's
noticing
on
it.
your mind already. And
Yeah.
so, in this case, you're already feeling a certain way. So you're seeing the Jehovah's Witnesses, and I'm sure it's making you feel extra guilty about your life, and like you need to get back, like Jehovah's calling for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can definitely see how you would feel that way. So, did you answer the call?
Yeah. And I mean, after being inactive for 12 years, that's a long time, but not really living a good life because I was so mentally indoctrinated still. So I did. I answered the call. It was 2012. And I was going back. I think it was like a year later that there was a magazine that they did, Return to the Shepherd. And that was like really for inactive ones to try to get them to come back. And I'm like, yes, I'm back. I'm so happy I'm back. But of course, the elders want to meet with me again, and they disfellowship me. And I'm like, brothers, I have not living this lifestyle anymore. But I think it's like 2 strikes, you're out. You've already, been out. You got to pay your dues type of deal. And I was like, I'm like, here, I'm desperate. I've been out for 12 years. And in order to come back, I got to prove myself to you. So you're going to disfellowship me again? And I didn't know anything about policies and procedures. I didn't know anything, but somebody had told me that you can write a letter of, what do they call it? A content letter or something. Uh,
Oh, you
contesting
mean
the
like a
disfellowship.
letter of appeal
I
to
did.
appeal your disfellowshipping?
Yeah. And so because I'm like, I've already made the changes that I needed to make. I'm not living that lifestyle and then, trying to come back. But they're like, oh, no, you still got to pay your dues. You still have to pay the piper type of deal. So I did an appeal. And then, oh my God, that was the worst thing I ever done. Then there were 6 elders,
Yeah,
3,
they got
and
two
then 3. And I'm like, holy shit. And they had me there for 6 hours. 6 freaking hours, and my back was hurting and going in and out, in and out. I was so tired and hurting, and I was like so intimidated. I was like, please just disfellowship me. Just let me go home. Let me go home, please. I just can't believe I gave them that kind of control. I should have just left. Like, bye. I don't need to be in your Mickey Mouse club. But I
But
was
you see, it's the slow progression, and they get more and more control, and that's how people end up getting sucked in that way.
ugh, just gets me.
Plus, you didn't know, probably, did you know when you were going to that appeal? Did you know that it was going to be 6 brothers? Did you know what you would have?
No, of course not.
Yeah, you know,
And
they don't
once
tell you.
again, they ask all kinds of personal questions. I'm like, this is freaking weird.
And you know that the appeal isn't really to adjudicate the details of your case, even though they'll ask you personal details again. All it is to see if the original group made a procedural error.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's all they care about.
So in my mind, this is really bad. I looked at these guys as the shepherds and the elders, and I says, wow, these guys have been here for 6 hours. These 6 different elders have been here for 6 hours themselves. I know they're not getting paid. They got families and wives and stuff that they could be spending their time with. They're not, they're not trying to get in my pocketbook. They're not trying to get down my pants. These guys are really volunteering their time. So they must really care. So these must really be God's, Jehovah's appointed men. And that's what I thought in my mind. I'm like, these guys, they're doing this voluntary. They're not trying to get in my pocketbook or my pants. So they must really care. And I took it as a sense that they loved me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, if you believe, then that's what you're gonna feel. You're gonna feel like they love you. It's not about control. It's not about them just doing their jobs. The things that keep them stuck in it too,
Yes.
which doing those kinds of things just keeps those elders stuck in it, thinking that they're doing the right thing, just like we did when we went door to door and everything else. So yeah, they may have cared, but it's still not healthy.
No, it's definitely not healthy. But took me a while to figure that out. I ended up, even once I got reinstated, a whole year not talking to anybody. Here I didn't have anybody. I severed the relationship with the guy, the mentor that I had. I didn't have any friends because I was so broken with my back. I couldn't have much of a social life. So I had nobody for friends, really. And there was one family. I remember I'd go watch the Bronco games with them, the Vela family. I'd go hang out, and that was very helpful to just have a Sunday dinner and watch the Bronco game. And I remember they would tell me things like, gosh, isn't that religion like really controlling and really trying to control your life? And you just don't see it. You're just so like, ugh.
Yeah,
You
you're too
can't
far
see
in the
it.
forest to see the trees.
Yeah.
You can't see what's going on. Other people can see, just like all the way back to your brother, all those years before, saying that how do you get kicked out of church?
Not only did I get kicked out of church, but I got kicked out of church twice.
Yeah.
Damn. I'm really bad.
But and can't you see too how insidious it is? They make you give up your relationships to isolate you, get you back in the fold, and then disfellowship you and isolate you even more.
They're very
It's
isolating.
so toxic and just awful the way they treat human beings.
So I never fully, after I came back that second time, I never fully gave up my relationships. I'm like, these people were here for me when I was disfellowshipped, and there's no way I'm going to turn my back on them. But you kind of limit your association with a lot of people, and I had a lot of like cousins and people that I would try to have relationships with and try to cultivate relationships with, but it was still always at such a level.
At arm's length, where like you
Mhm.
had a relationship, you knew them, but I can't get too close, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then
So
when I got reinstated, I even wrote a letter to all 6 elders, thanking them for all their love and attention to help get the lost sheep back in the fold. Ugh.
it just keeps like you see the system, it just keeps reinforcing itself down the line, right? And obviously now you don't feel the same way about it. So how did this time go of being reinstated?
Oh goodness. Well, it was it was nice because I started to get my health was starting to get better, so I was able to do a lot more things and went to some international conventions, and that was really fun. And you feel like a good sense of love and brotherhood throughout the world. You know, all these different countries coming together, and the same convention we had in the United States is the same convention as over there. And um, but I was, 40 years old, and like I'm single and I got needs. I'm really horny. I need a man. and and there was like slim pickings in the Jehovah's Witnesses. If they were single, it was like somebody, okay, gotta have, there has to be some type of an attraction. Just because he's a Jehovah's Witness doesn't mean I'm gonna, marry him. And it was very difficult for my age too, because the
Mhm.
guys that were single, their health and just they looked just awful. Let themselves go. The wheels just fell off.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's way more sisters than brothers inside the organization anyway, and as people get married off at young ages, when you're 40, there's not a lot out there to choose from. Probably, there wasn't to begin with.
There
There's
wasn't to
even
begin
less.
with, less.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of your videos with a lot of people talking about in their early 20s or late teens, they end up getting married because they don't want to sin. And I'm like, it's the same thing no matter what age you are. You're 40. I mean, we're humans. We have those desires, and we're made that way. And
Mhm.
it's like, you marry so you can fulfill those desires when you're Jehovah's Witness. And then you end up making bad choices of who you're marrying because that's your sole focus.
Yeah, that's a great point. We weren't really taught how to have relationships or be healthy just together with other people. Um, the only thing you really ever looked toward, marriage. Well, what was going to change? You can have sex, and go out in service and go to all the meetings and comment, and like all those other things are the same. The only thing, there's not much that changes, right? There's
Right.
another person around and you can have sex with them, and that's it. Like there's no depth there. They don't encourage healthy relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. So I ended up finally meeting somebody, and there was definitely physical attraction. So it was hard to meet anybody that there was a physical attraction with that was a Jehovah's Witness. So there was a physical attraction. He was a nice, good looking guy. And then he fit the box of being a Jehovah's Witness. So I'm like, okay, two boxes, boom, let's get married. Took
How long did you all date before you got married?
6 months, but it was like long distance relationship. And then here we're adults and we have to be chaperoned. And his mom and dad would just call all the time. And I thought it was just because they were just wanting to make sure we weren't alone. And but it was the minute we got married, they still did not stop calling. It was quite weird.
So
Quite
one of those relationships where it's way too enmeshed with the rest of the family and everybody, like you can't pull away from it. And so, mom and dad are always there.
Oh, it was so freaking bizarre. I knew from our honeymoon, like this is like really bad, where this is really bad. The mom and dad called nonstop on the honeymoon. And then just throughout any time. We're at dinner having a nice romantic dinner. Oh, my mom's calling. Let me excuse me for a moment. And he would excuse himself. We'd be at a spa, relaxing, doing something. It was just like no matter what we were doing, it was it was so bizarre. So bizarre. We're at the airport and sitting there waiting for our luggage, and he's on the phone. And then I was just like, oh my God, I'm in trouble. This is not good. And he had no clue either. I mean, this guy's 40 years old too. I mean, hello. Like when we got back from our honeymoon, as we were starting to get settled in, I got home from work and he's on the phone one of the parents. And so then we were going to go to dinner. We went to dinner, and then all of a sudden, the other parent calls as we're out to dinner. And we're eating dinner, and he's sitting there on the phone. I mean, just chit chatting, not even like, oh, can you need something? Let me, take care of it or whatever. Just chit chatting. I mean, is that not the freaking rudest thing in the whole world? You don't go to lunch with dinner with somebody and then sit there at dinner while they're on the phone chit chatting with somebody. And I said, do you know how rude you are? And he didn't even have a clue. He was like, what? Really? I mean, I don't even think he realized until I told him that. I'm like, it's very, very rude to be on the phone with anybody, period. When you're out to dinner, or, you with somebody.
Yeah, but and at that point, he had already built up a lot of. There's already a negativity around talking to the parents all the time, because there are these weirdly enmeshed families inside the organization that really just don't have any boundaries. Just like the organization has no boundaries with its members,
His
and a lot of
family
families
had
have
no
no boundaries.
boundaries.
Yeah,
No
yeah, I
boundaries.
see that a lot, and I've seen people get roped into marrying people because um, maybe they're dating someone and that person's family starts getting super involved in their lives and just like swallows them, like envelops them, and they can't not get married to that person now because now it's this entire ordeal, or they've someone's helped them buy a house or something for when they get married. It just ends up being this thing where there's all this momentum behind it, and then like you're talking about, you know your husband was on the phone with his parents all the time to the detriment of his relationship with you. He that they were his primary relationship, not you.
Totally.
And there's a lot of that in the organization.
Oh, I was pretty shocked, but it was the marriage only lasted about 20 minutes. It was so embarrassing because the gifts weren't even unpacked all completely, and he's already moving out. It was just a disaster and very embarrassing, very embarrassing. But I had really started doing a lot of work on myself because physically I was always in so much pain that I'm like, okay, if I have to work on mental, I'll work on mental to try to help with physical. So I had already done a lot of work on myself to know that that wasn't a healthy relationship, and that's not what I wanted. I deserve somebody that wants to be with me and gives me their sole undivided attention.
Well, obviously Jehovah's Witnesses frown upon marriages that where parties end up splitting,
Hmm.
for no matter how that occurs or if he left or whatever. um, did that cause problems for you again?
Oh yeah, it was. I wasn't being submissive. I needed to go follow him and go live with him in New Mexico. Then I wouldn't have had it any way to support myself financially. I would have given up my means of a living if I would have moved in with him. And then what? Go move in, and he's constantly not are they not calling all the parents are not going to be calling all the time, but they're going to just showing up.
Oh, because that's where they lived.
Yeah.
Oh goodness. Oh.
So, I was lectured that I wasn't being a submissive wife, I didn't go, I should have moved in, should have followed him. He was my husband. And I was too strong-handed and independent or something like that. I was just like really like looked down upon. And I always sensed this from the organization that I was always judged because I was a career woman and had a, decent career. But yet at the same time, I was giving money to the organization, and I was able to go on a lot of these trips, international conventions in Bethel and things like that. I wouldn't have been able to go on those trips and give money to the organization had I not been in the financial situation I was in. But I was constantly I always felt judged. Um,
Well, Watchtower probably liked you because you were giving them money, but the people in the organization around you were probably judgmental because they were jealous, that you had gone out and made a life for yourself in some ways, or there's always something they can judge you about.
yeah.
yeah, you make money, but you're not at all the meetings or whatever. Like anything they can find to separate you so that they can feel better about themselves is typically going to cause be the cause for some judgment.
Mhm.
And it's a sad race to the bottom usually in those instances. But career women inside the organization and inside a
Are
misogynistic
frowned upon
organization,
big time.
yeah,
Yeah, and I wasn't being submissive. I was expected to just give up my career and go follow this knucklehead and that was still attached to his mommy and daddy.
at 40
Yeah.
in his 40s. And not that there's anything wrong with having some attachment, but at that level, obviously, it was a problem, and he wasn't willing to um, address it.
Yeah.
Which gets down to the boundary issues that then follow a lot of us outside the organization when we leave. People have issues with boundaries with their families, and it's a whole thing. But it's set up that way. You can't have boundaries in a cult, right? Uh, Cults are all about overreaching people's boundaries and not allowing for people to have healthy boundaries within them. And so you see a lack of healthy boundaries all throughout Jehovah's organization.
Yeah. I sensed that this guy had, didn't have very high self-esteem of
Yeah.
himself. And he was talked to a bunch of girls. Oh, but he would even say, "Oh, but they're Jehovah's Witnesses." It's like, who cares? Who wants their husband or wife to be on the phone with, other people of the opposite sex, just chit chatting away? What are you doing? Da, 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 da. It's just inappropriate. So he had these relationships, not just with his parents, but with these other members that were Jehovah's Witnesses. And they were so dependent on him too. Like, what do I do about my dentist situation? What do I do about my car? And he liked to feel like he was needed. And I think it made him feel good. And it fed to his ego because he had such a low self-esteem with himself.
Yeah, absolutely. Rescuers typically are trying to fill their own self-esteem by rescuing other people.
Mm-hmm.
And that sounds like that's what he was doing, was trying to rescue these sisters or whatever. But in the end, and certainly there's nothing wrong with him having friends of the opposite sex. But again, he was neglecting you. Here you are again feeling neglected in a relationship. And that's just not obviously what you want in life.
Yeah, I'm like, here you got this hot, sexy wife that just wants to be with you all the time and then jump your bones, and you're just ignoring me.
Yeah.
Hello.
So obviously you're talking to me today. What is the path from there to here? What led you out of the organization?
Well, he left, and he was a long distance truck driver, and I was going to get a private investigator to show that because I don't want to be alone. I mean, my God, to have to sit there and, okay, he left you, but now you just have to be alone the rest of your life. It just felt awful. It felt like a death sentence.
Mhm.
So I was hiring a private investigator to show that I was legally free, yeah, scripturally free. And the elders were like, that isn't enough proof. A private investigator, photos of spending the night at a hotel with a woman is not proof? They said, no, it's not proof enough. You need two witnesses or a confession. And I was like,
And
what?
there have to be two witnesses,
Witnesses.
Jehovah's Witnesses.
I
That's
didn't
the
even
only
know
people
that
they
part
care
actually
about.
till that way later. But in my mind, I was like, this feels really wrong. There's
It
something at a
is.
very deep level just does not feel right.
And what are you going to do? Go find a Jehovah's Witness private investigator and hire two of them, apparently, to go and take the same photographs of him at a hotel with another woman? Like, that's ridiculous. It's so absurd. Again, it's about procedure. It's not about people. They're not seeing Suzanna in front of them with these pictures, hurting and wanting to move on with their life. They just say, well, there's a procedure here and you have to have two witnesses, and we don't validate people on the outside being a witness to something. So
Yeah. So yeah, at a very deep level, I'm like, this doesn't feel right. It feels really bad. And I knew at a gut intuition something was bad. And I remember when I had first gotten reinstated, I went in and I saw a video, and I looked at a video to try to see what, if I can find some information about the organization. But I saw this one video, and this guy was very angry, and it scared me. And I'm like, oh yeah, they're right. Oh, all the people on the internet are just angry and apostates, and that scared me. So I never ever looked again online or anything. I never questioned it. But at a deep level, I'm like, this just doesn't feel right. And I'm a young woman, and I need to go move on with my life. And I was salsa dancing. It was actually at a Cuban restaurant. It was like during lunch time, because I don't feel comfortable going to like nightclubs. So it was like a daytime family environment with kids and old people. And then that's when my uh, boyfriend walked into the room. I was like, wow, he's so handsome and he's such a good dancer. And I'm like, I'm not gonna let Watchtower control my life and my happiness. So I just started going down the road of dating him. And then I had a business friend that said, I know a former Jehovah's Witness. I'd really like to make an introduction. And it kind of scared me. I was like, oh, former Jehovah's Witness. And so we got together for coffee, and she had a bunch of books, a bunch of books that Rutherford had written, with the pyramidology and all that stuff. She didn't bring the books with her. I'm thankful she didn't, because at that time it would have shut me down too quickly. And then she had Raymond Fran's book, and she just says, I have these books. If you ever want to see them, borrow them, happy to lend them to you. And I was just like, oh, so, I was kind of scared, but kind of curious. So it allowed myself to be like the Wizard of Oz and look behind the curtain a little bit, sneak peek. And I started looking at videos, and I heard about the child abuse scandals. But in my Jehovah's Witness mind, I'm thinking there's bad people everywhere, and this is a very sick world we live in, and so of course there's going to be perverts in any organization, and so I didn't realize the level of scandal and cover up from the leadership. And you hear of so many stories internationally, and it's always the same. It always plays out the same. These people don't even know each other. How does it always play out the same? Different countries, different worlds. And it plays out the same because the elders are policy procedure guys, and they're calling the service department before they do anything. And the service department is advising them to do the exact same thing. And it's just constant cover up. And it was such scandal that it just really got me sick to my stomach, to my core. I'm like, these fuckers, they are going on witch hunts, trying to disfellowship consensual adults for having sex. They're trying to disfellowship these people, but yet they don't do anything about the freaking pedophiles. They're covering it up. Are you out of your flipping mind? That was that. I was just done. And then the Zulkin attorney who brought down the Catholic Church, he says the Catholics knew about it. He goes, the Jehovah's Witnesses have it in writing. This secret database that they have of all these pedophiles that they've never reported to authorities. And yet they'll go through lengths, all these witch hunts, to disfellowship grown adults for having consensual sex with other grown adults. I don't get it.
Yeah. I mean, again, but then they wouldn't go after your husband at the time, who, you had the pictures of, from a private investigator of him going into a room with at a hotel with a woman. They're so inconsistent, but then so very consistent when it comes to child abuse, child sexual abuse, and how they mishandle it over and over again. And even to the point where, I mean, you mentioned Zalkin, so about the case, I think it was in San Diego, where Jehovah's Witnesses were actively paying fines in court of like $4,000 a day to not tell the names in this document that they had redacted everybody's names in it. They redacted it so much that it was unusable. And the court said, you can't do that. You have to at least participate. You can redact a few things, but not everything. And they had just redacted so much that the court fined them $4,000 a day, and they were willing to pay that rather than to give the truth about what had happened, because they don't give a shit about truth. They just care about money and appearance and
Protecting their
power.
name,
That's what they
protecting their name. But
Yeah.
Jehovah can protect his own damn name. What about protecting the kids, you bastards? I mean, it just gets me
Yeah.
very, very sick. And here the regular member Jehovah's Witness are told not to take your brothers to court and don't go to court and this and that and just suck things up, be long suffering, to move the other cheek. But yet they're going to take people to court to not have to pay these fines. They're like infamous for, you know, going to court and dragging this stuff out because they got the money to do it.
You have a huge legal department, right?
Yeah, huge legal department.
Someone once told me, I don't, you know, I haven't been to the new headquarters or anything, but someone once told me that, you know, it's basically primarily accounting and legal. You know, and I was like, well, that kind of makes sense, you know, for them to have, and I don't, you know, again, I'm saying I don't know that that's necessarily true, but someone said that, and it does make sense. They've got a lot of money to count, and they've got a lot of procedures to create legally and otherwise to try to constantly be picking at words and things like that to skirt lawsuits or whatever the case may be, on their own end, from, you know, people who've been hurt inside their organization, but they're not willing to help anybody. Just like in Australia.
So that was just, or the Australian Royal Commission. Oh my God.
Yep, and they're not gonna participate in the redress scheme, and they're not gonna help anybody out that needs help, and they're not gonna give any money to anybody.
And they don't apologize for nothing. They don't apologize for a damn thing.
Well, narcissists don't apologize. You're always wrong.
But they're telling their members to go apologize.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So that started the waking up process, you know, researching those things. And so I guess, where are you today? Where's that leave you in life?
Well, I went down a rabbit hole of just watching YouTube videos like crazy and getting anything that I could get on information. And so I think we should all be very grateful and thankful for podcasts like yourself and a lot of the other ones out there, Raymond Pran's books, because it really helps people. Before the internet, you thought you were alone. And to hear stories like that you do and other people do, it's just like, wow, this is so mind boggling. And we're not alone. We all been there, felt that way. And it's really nice to be able to have that support, to know that, you know, you're not alone.
Yeah, we're in a spiritual paradise today.
Yeah.
It is so awesome though to see people now get to, you know, you get to wake up with other people and hear what other people have to say, and like you said, not feel alone. I can't imagine leaving, you know, maybe in the 70s or something.
Yeah.
I just can't imagine what that must have been like.
Yeah.
So tough. Today we have a wealth of support groups and coaches and therapists and books and podcasts and videos, and just there's so many things. There's artists out there that produce art. There's so many different ways that we can express ourselves now, or see others express themselves that might resonate with us. And it is a beautiful thing to have all these things at your disposal.
Yeah. And, you know, it gets me very sad, because I know you've talked a lot about Jehovah's Witnesses being disfellowshipped and committing suicide. The uncle, that cousin that I went to elementary school with that didn't participate in the holidays, his mom and dad were Jehovah's Witness, and they got divorced probably during the time I was studying, like I was in my teenage years. They got divorced, and then he got disfellowshipped. But at that time, I didn't really grasp what disfellowshipping was, you know. And he stayed disfellowshipped for many, many years, and he never went back. And he committed suicide, that uncle. I mean, I don't know if it was because of that, or it could have been for lots of other reasons, who knows, but to have your whole family, and this was my great uncle. So it was my great grandparents. It was his parents that were strong, strong, dedicated Jehovah's Witnesses. And, that had to have been really hard. I never had anybody. I don't have shit. So it's like, if you lose something, you never had anything anyway to lose. But I just feel so bad for some people that have had good families, good relationships, and then just get torn away from you because of the whole disfellowshipping. It's just very sad.
Yeah, and the shame that they heap upon people,
Hmm.
making you feel like a bad person, that can be really hard to shake.
Yeah.
Never being enough for anybody, and it is. Yeah, I have because it could have been me too. I have a very soft spot in my heart for anyone that has felt that desperate, because I was there myself at one point, and I get how deep that pain is when you're in that spot, and they just make you feel awful. They make you feel like terrible people, and it's, again, it's just part of the dysfunction and the toxicity, and just how truly ugly the organization is, and how it makes people feel ultimately,
Yeah.
and which I think is, the contrast, right? You were in a really dark place when you found Jehovah's
Yeah.
Witnesses, and
Very vulnerable
and
place.
very vulnerable, and it helped you at least to
Yeah.
escape or avoid some certain things.
Yeah.
But even at that doesn't mean it's good.
It wasn't healthy by any means. And I was so, you and I had talked about this. I kept on talking about the Jehovah's Witness moms, the spiritual moms, the spiritual moms. I was just so drawn to them and always back to them because I needed them. I needed their love. I needed their support. I needed their, and then the lady that I met with for coffee, who was a former Jehovah's Witness that had all these books, like her mom won't talk with her. And she wasn't officially disfellowshipped or anything like that, but her mom, I'm sure her mom's a good person, but because of the indoctrination, just will not have anything to do with her. And and I'm thinking to myself, here I am so wanting the love of these Jehovah's Witness moms, but they will shun their own flesh and blood if if the organization tells them to. So what are they going to do with me? Of course they're going to shun me. I'm nothing to them. I mean, I'm sure they do care and did care, but
But
if they're
only so
gonna,
far.
yeah, so far, if they're going to do that to their own flesh and blood, of course they would do it to me too. And they have. I remember one time that so spiritual mom that I so loved, when I was disfellowshipped, I saw her at a restaurant, and I saw another one at a hotel at a airport, and treated me like I was dead. Just walk right past you.
No. Sometimes they just walk past and they don't look. Sometimes they look and they give the look of disdain and disgust at you because you're not one of them anymore. It depends on the individual. But yeah, you become an unperson to them. You don't
No.
exist. Um, so you've just left at this point, just kind of walked away, right?
I did. I just totally walked away. I remember the spiritual mom, she had had some of my things and she had given them to me. It's been about maybe two years ago. And she had said something about my attitude. That can get you disfellowshipped. And I was like, who cares? They want to disfellowship me. Who cares? And I really meant it. And that was like a big just turning point for me when she says, well, that can get you disfellowshipped. I'm like, who the heck cares? You know what? If they don't want to have a relationship with me, then it's not worth having.
What a cool position to be in, where you've gone from even appealing this fellowshipping and showing up to a six elder, judicial committee, and then thanking them for it, to a point where today you can see, who cares?
Yeah.
Why am I going to let these people dictate my life to me? I can go live my own life and be happy. And if they don't want to be a part of it, that's their decision. It's not yours. It's on
Yeah.
them if they don't want to be a part of your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now with COVID, and I think they're trying to make their hours, I'm getting lots of emails and text messages and things like that. And I'm like, haven't heard from you forever. And plus you're going to hide behind all this stuff versus just picking up the phone and saying, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
They really, I mean, I'm sure they care at some level, but it's all about the sales to them. It's all about making their hours and trying to, their Jehovah's Witness sales hat on to try to get you back to the Kingdom Hall. In
Mhm.
fact, one lady knew that I moved here to Atlanta, and she said, I have a friend that lives in Atlanta. Do you mind if I make the introduction to you guys? And I'm like, no, because it's not going to be friends. It's going to be to try to get me to go back to be a Jehovah's Witness. And I'm not having it anymore. I'm not going to have it anymore. So anytime they start preaching to me and start trying to preaching sales pitches, then I start sending them YouTube videos about the child abuse scandals.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. And I love that you what you just said. It's not about they just care about you and want to be friends. They want to get you back to the organization. They're just trying to sell you on something. It's not about who you are, and they want to learn, well, who's Suzanna today? Suzanna hasn't been around and she's been living this other life. What's she like? What's she like today? How could we be friends? With where she is today, they want to change you and get you to come back. And that's what it's always about. And I always tell people, don't mistake a drop of water in a desert for an oasis, because it's not.
And I did for many years.
Yeah, they throw us crumbs.
I'm thinking,
And then
oh,
hope we lap
they
it up.
love me. They care about me. They're reaching out to me.
Yep. And in reality, it's still an emotional desert. There's still nothing there for you.
Nothing.
They'll just make it, just any little iota of attention feels good from them because they've cut you off for so long, and so they want to keep sucking you back in with that, and it just really keeps people feeling desperate, and it's just not healthy.
Yeah.
But you do have a new life today, don't you?
I definitely do, and I'm so happy, especially with COVID and everything that's going on. People could be like just a mess, turmoil-wise, with their mind. And if you were somebody that was indoctrinated and still think it's the organization, oh God, I got to get back, or I'm getting the great tribulation, it's going to happen. And it's like, oh, it's so freeing to know that the truth is not the truth.
Absolutely.
Freaking lie. And in fact, when there was a bunch of lawsuits with the governing, I'm sure you heard about that, with the governing body. They were being named personally liable for some lawsuits for covering up some sexual pedophilia stuff. And I had sent those videos, and I'm like, hey, did you hear the new light about the governing body?
Getting some trolling in. Did you count your time though? You got to count your time.
Counted as a return visit.
Yeah, your apostate time.
I'm not going to go seek people out and try to convince them otherwise. But if they're going to send me something, then I'm going to send them something right back.
Absolutely. Why not? So what's your life like today? What do you like about your new life? Now you know that it's not the truth. You're not tethered to it mentally and emotionally. What do you like about your new life today?
I like that it is lighter. I'm not in a hamster wheel. My time is my time. If I want to sleep in on Saturday mornings, I now have the energy and the health to be able to go salsa dancing. So if I want to go salsa dancing, there's nothing wrong with it. I can go salsa dancing and have a good time. I've learned to love and forgive myself. I've learned to accept myself and be good to myself. I think in the organization, you just get so beat down all the time. You good for nothing slave. You good for nothing. You're no good. It's like we have to just love and accept ourselves for where we're at today, and just be thankful and grateful.
Absolutely. Do you have anything that you're looking forward to? I mean, obviously, COVID time right now is not great for everyone.
Yeah.
It's impacting a lot of plans and such. But eventually, is there anything that you're looking forward to adding in your life or having that you want?
Yeah, so I just made a big move out of state, from Denver, Colorado to Atlanta, Georgia. So that was a big move, new job, new house, and this whole kitchen is totally brand new. We just totally been construction zone for many months. So that's been mind. It's been fun for the mind to get this done. But long term, I really, my goal is to write a memoir of myself, my life story. It's called La Luchadora, the fighter. Dun, 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 dun.
I hope that it's a musical book, and when you open it up, it plays that. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, my goal would be just to do some more healing for myself. I'd like that book to help me with my healing, and if it can help anybody else, then great. And I really, at some very deep level, my big, hairy, audacious goal would try to uh, get it visible on Oprah's platform of the child abuse. I really think we need somebody public like an Oprah to make it public about what's going on with the Jehovah's Witnesses, because they just look, they on the outside, people just think of them as this nice little organization, and the majority of people are very nice and sincere, but they have no idea of the policies and the doctrines and the cover up that's gone on. And what really, really bothers me the most, and why I'm so take this to heart, is because me and my brother we were high risk kids. You know, our mom was partying and, you know, had men coming in and out of the house. And I always thought child abuse, sexual abuse happened to kids like my brother and I that were high risk, that were the parents were neglectful. And those are the kinds that the pedophiles just, you know, are drawn to, because those parents are neglectful and the kids are just easy targets. And I thought it was just kids like my brother and I that were just high risk kids. And then when I came to find out about the organization, I would see like this really nice mom and dad and kind and loving. And oh, I'd be so jealous of these kids. This little girl was my age. And I was like, man, little bitch, she has no idea how good she has it. The mom's a great cook. The dad's a good provider. They're such a nice, so loving and such a nice family. Well, even the pedophiles groom those kids too, because of the mindset of the organization. And there was one girl that was groomed. Well, not only was she groomed, but the parents, the really good parents, were groomed, and they got the trust of these parents. And then they let the guy come into their house, and it was just awful. Well, then the parents don't even go to the police because the elders are telling them not to. Well, not necessarily not to. It's your right to go to the police, but just think about what it's going to do to Jehovah's name and his, you know, reputation, and protecting his name. And so they didn't go to the police. And I'm like, that is so freaking manipulative, that you're going to groom the parents, and then the organization is going to not outrightly tell the parents they can't go to the police, but there's always there's the culture and there's the doctrine of Jehovah's Witness, and it's the culture. The culture will get them not to go to the police, and that, oh my God, it has to stop. And we need some awareness.
Mhm. Absolutely. Well, I'll get off the call here and go call Oprah real quick. You know, a low level podcaster. I'm just gonna reach out to Oprah right quick. It would absolutely, you know, it's funny. Jehovah's Witnesses feel they have this persecution complex. Everybody in the world's out to get them, but yet they've got this massive, awful thing going inside, and we're screaming at the top of our lungs, "Hey, come check this out!" And nobody's coming to check it out.
No.
Shut up about the persecution. You are not being persecuted. If you should be persecuted, or the organization should be, based on, you know, some of the things it's doing, but we can't even get the recognition of what's going on there. We can't get media outlets to cover it like it should be. We can't get all the powers that be in the world to turn on them. So, you know, it's so ridiculous that they claim persecution about everything, because there are legitimate things that they should have their ass handed to them for, and it's not, and it doesn't happen because nobody cares about them. They're not the center of the world's attention. Nobody cares about Jehovah's Witnesses.
Exactly. I think they're paying some really good
Oh, there may be that.
PR companies to kind of keep
Yeah.
it, try to keep it as quiet as possible,
Oh, yeah.
constantly paying these type of companies to keep it on the down low as much as they can.
Yeah, they know what they're doing.
Hmm.
They know what they're doing. And they hide it from their own members. Their own members don't know what's up. So then when we say something to a Jehovah's Witness about the Australian Royal Commission or whatever, that's apostate driven
Oh
lies,
gosh.
which is just so stupid.
Yeah.
It was a court case. I literally stayed up and watched it live as
Oh
I'm
my
reading
God. That had to have been
dissertation.
hours, days.
Yes. Yes. I would stay up at night and watch it online, watch it live because I had just left and it was blowing my mind to learn all this. I didn't even know that stuff when I left.
Yeah.
So, it's ridiculous the claims they make, but so ultimately though, so now on this platform, at least you are bringing that to, people's attention. Who knows who will watch this and it
Yeah.
might help someone else out there.
Yeah.
It's your own story. It's going to
And
help.
all I gotta say, if Jehovah's Witnesses come knocking at your door, I'm sure the people that are at your door are lovely. I mean, the majority of them are. They're victims themselves and they don't even realize it. I would say, I would scream at the top of my lungs, run, Forrest, run!
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Run for the hills. Do not stop.
Do not stop, especially in this time with COVID and everybody like in a desperate situation. I can see, oh, we got the answers and God's going to come and blah, blah, blah. And then people getting sucked into it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not the end. Life will go on.
Yes.
And you have a wonderful life now and a wonderful life that you hope to live. And that's beautiful. And I think everybody, who will watch this or listen will be happy for you, happy to see you, get to have your own life as well. You've been through a lot yourself. You deserve and have earned this life that you have today.
Right.
And I'm glad to have met you myself and to get to know your story some. I want to see you do well as also.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing your story.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for all that you do.